We work to preserve the business interests of our members, as well as being the voice of the homeowners out there protecting private property rights. So with that being said, we are going to have an awesome debate here today. We are entertaining candidates from two of the hottest races in San Diego. And of course, that's our Congressional 50th District seat and our San Diego mayoral debate. Before I introduce our moderator, I want to give thank yous out to some of our sponsors that are out there. We have our Asian Business Association of San Diego. Give them a big hand. The Building Industry Association, BIA. Circulate San Diego, National Association of Realtors. Our San Diego County Taxpayers Association. San Diego East County Chamber of Commerce, our San Diego North Economic Development Council, and our Southern California Rental Housing Association. Yeah, we want to thank all our partners. There's some great collaboration that happens with that. With that being said, I want to welcome to the stage the editor and opinion director of San Diego Union Tribune. Right, well-respected President-elect and National Board of Society of Professional Journalists. Got it. Matt Hall.
Thank you for that introduction, Carla, and thank you all for showing up today on a Friday. It's obviously Friday afternoon. There are many other things we all could be doing. This is one of the most important, and it better be because y'all are going to get stuck in traffic when you leave. So I'd like to thank the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors for hosting us today and quickly call the candidates to the stage to get us started. I'll call you in alphabetical order, and the first person I call can stand to my immediate left, and we'll also field the first question or correction. We'll also take the microphone for opening comments. And that person is the lone Democrat in the field, Amar Campanajjar. Come on up, come on up. Let's get this started. Carl DeMaio, Republican. Helen Horvath, no party preference. Retired Republican Congressman Darrell Issa. Current California State Senator Brian Jones. And another no party preference candidate, Henry Ota. All right, just quickly, the format tonight, every candidate will have 1 minute for opening remarks, 1 minute for our answers, and 30-second rebuttals if mentioned. And at my discretion, I might ask a follow-up question, but all of the questions will be posed to each candidate. We'll end with 1 minute of closing statements. So why don't we start with opening remarks, Amar Campanajjar.
Awesome. Well, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This is not how I envisioned spending it. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amar Campanajjar. I ran for Congress in 2018, nearly won, give the 40-year dynasty the best run that they ever had. And now we're seeking to find the next congressman. I was born in East County, raised by a single working class mom. She's actually here, and she's rarely at these events because she's always working. So hi, Mom. She actually works in real estate, by the way, with my aunt Mini Rizlowski. Some of you may know her. And she raised me through her own, through being a broken heart. At the age of 15, I had to take a job as a janitor at my local church. I got to go work at the U.S. Department of Labor, the White House, start my own small business, come back to give back to my district. And I'm tired of politicians looking down to people we've looked up to our whole lives, right? Working class people like all of us, small business owners, working people, realtors, who really are putting in an honest day's work. while the well-off and well-connected get the most breaks. So for me, it's about rewarding the middle class, lowering the cost of housing, which we'll talk about today, and making sure that healthcare is affordable. We'll talk about all of that today, but thank you all for being here and getting civically involved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's great to see so many people here. This is an important race. It's who do we trust to go to Washington and fight, not sell out, not flip-flop, not quit, but who's going to go to Washington and fight for the issues that matter to our residents. More importantly, not just in Washington, who will use the platform of that congressional seat to fight in California for a more affordable and more livable climate in our state. The realtors know more than any others that we have net migration from California because people can no longer afford to live here, they can no longer stomach living here. Whether it's the affordable housing crisis, whether it's the homeless crisis, whether it's the high cost of energy and water, the high taxes, we see people leaving because California was not what it once was. I want to be the voice of opposition. It's time that someone end the supermajority control in California. I can do that as a member of Congress and do my job in Washington. You can do both. It's called leadership. It's not called passing the buck, not
Thank you,
my
Carl.
responsibility. With me, you're going to get a fighter on all the issues that matter to you.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today. As you may know, my parents were immigrants from Hungary. They came here with nothing. And my parents inspired me throughout my lifetime to be the change that we wish to see in the world. I am so disgusted with the behavior of politicians and how they are not representing our communities. I am the only prominent woman in this election, and I'm the most educated candidate. I have a doctorate degree in organizational development psychology, and it's in the book you received. And I also have 22 years of federal government operations experience, HR, and a variety of other areas. I received 2 honorable discharges, and for 22 years held a secret security clearance while passing federal government background investigations. I am here today because of the community. I am working for the community, not for a particular party. Thank you very much for your time, and we will be working on women's issues. Thank you.
I'm Congressman Darrell Issa. Oddly enough, I have 2 honorable discharges too, from the United States Army, both as an enlisted man and as an officer. I was honored to serve the people of North County and San Diego, parts of Orange and parts of Riverside County for 18 years. I left because in 2016 I helped President Trump get elected. He called me to Trump Tower and asked me to serve in his administration. But my race and the nature of my district, which was lost by 9 points to Hillary Clinton, was that it wasn't fit for a special election. It would have been adverse to his administration. So we agreed I would come in 2 years later. I gave my party notice and I retired in the ordinary course of my service. The president nominated me not once, but twice to serve in his administration, and I was blocked by the Senate. So when, as one of my colleagues says, after 40 years of what he calls a dynasty, and I would say it was 2 combat veterans who served this district,
Thank you,
I saw
Congressman.
it as an
That's a minute.
opportunity to serve again.
Good afternoon, San Diego Association of Realtors. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I'm Senator Brian Jones. But more important than that, for the last 2 or 3 years, I've had the opportunity to be your MC at the New Laws event that I guess happened earlier today. For some reason, I must have done something wrong last year. I didn't get invited back to be the MC this year. It must have something to do with this afternoon. But it is an honor to be with you as an update from last year when I was sharing with you the condition of my real estate license. I was able to pass the continuing education classes and get it renewed, so I'm a fully licensed real estate agent again. And look forward to participating in the real estate economy hopefully soon. But it is a pleasure to be back. Many of you know me. I currently represent East County and North County in the state Senate. Looking forward to representing those same areas in Southern Riverside in Washington, D.C. as your 50th District Congressman, which just so happens my Senate district and the Congressional District overlap by over 80%. So I won 180,000 votes last year in the Senate race, and looking forward to having a large portion of those votes again this year. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. As the least known candidate in the 50th congressional race, let me introduce myself. My name is Henry Ota. I am actually a loan officer here in San Diego, California, so many of you may recognize me from crashing one of your open houses. I have one initiative or agenda that I would be looking to pass if elected to Congress, and that is the implementation of a universal civilian service. I will go into more detail as we move along, but essentially the goal of this was in the first 2 years to end homelessness in the United States of America. Point blank, it's simple. This problem is not as big as everybody makes it out to be, and I look forward to discussing those ideas as we move forward. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you. And if I could just again ask to try to keep to 1 minute. We obviously have a tight turnaround to get the mayoral candidates in here at the next forum.
Do we have I'm sorry, do we have a timer that's keeping time for us, or you're trusting us to do that?
We have this, but do you guys have something to show the candidates up front?
Oh, okay, you're just going to cut us off at a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's fine with me. Perfect.
You guys are pros. This is what, the 2,700th one of these you guys have done?
First.
First. Okay, fair point. And we'll start with you.
That's good.
Henry. Housing affordability question. What would you do to make housing more affordable for the residents of your district, and be specific?
Okay, so the true definition of affordable housing, guys, is 30% of your gross income. And if you look at the average income of the constituents in our district, it's about $50,000. So you're realistically talking about $1,200 a month. Now, we all know you're not going to put a family in a 2-3-bedroom house for $1,200, $1,300 a month in this city. So through the implementation of my Universal Civilian Service Program, anybody who volunteers for this program would have the same eligibility rights that the current VA housing system has. I'd also look for some grants and opening up opportunity in green zones to all new development, as long as they adhere to specific guidelines, making those houses sustainable and affordable.
Thank you. Senator.
Thank you. This is a really important question, especially for California, as has been mentioned. People are leaving California for less expensive places to live. So at the federal level, the federal government is probably doing a pretty decent job of staying out of the way of housing affordability. The problem is here in California, state regulations, local regulations, fees, taxes, permitting, and of course CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. And as many of you know that have built homes, developed homes, or been in that process, delaying a project makes the project more expensive. So we've got regional water quality control issues that are happening as well. So currently in Sacramento, I'm working with the authors of SB 50 that just recently failed to make sure we come back with a product, a bill that is applicable across the state, that the local jurisdictions can support, and returns local control to our cities, who are going to do the best job of zoning and promoting
Thank you, Senator.
development. So we're working on it.
Congressman.
Well, I think the state senator said it pretty well. The problem in California is in California. But there's no question at all, the federal government has certain areas historically that have been part of the problem. We have a strong tendency to engage, if you will, in rules that don't have funding behind them, and then California takes them further. We also have the question of the consistency of the availability of low-cost funds. And that's an area that I think we in the federal government need to stay on top of, making sure that there's an abundance of funds available for those who want to buy homes or make investments in other people's homes. Saying that, though, it is California's challenge, and California must meet the challenge. And today they're not And I think the state senator is exactly right. We need Sacramento to do their job.
Thank you. Helen?
One of the things I've researched is the Low Income Housing Commission. There's a lot of fraud in the federal government with regard to housing. People don't want low-income housing in their neighborhoods, but as everyone has said, low income nowadays is about $50,000. And so affordability is another issue. I work with Omar Passins and also David Estrella in the past because I'm promoted by Supervisor Jacobs into a position that gives me that network. And so we want to work collaboratively with all Board of Supervisors staff, county members, and also the realtors to find solutions to these issues. And so one of the things that I would like to see is addressing low-income housing affordability through grants and things like that, instead of giving tax breaks to larger corporations to develop more buildings outside of the realm of need.
Thank you, Helen.
I won't just tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you what I've done already. I've defeated $3 billion in tax increases in the last 13 years. 1/3 of those tax increases, by the way, were property tax increases. We are still working on defeating a $56 billion tax hike, repealing the gas tax with a proper title and summary for the voters. I've cut water rates. I've cut water rates through pension reform, $138 million for homeowners in the city of San Diego since 2012. But what am I going to do next? We're going to fight Prop 13's repeal, the split roll initiative, in November, because don't make any mistake about it, they're not going to end with the industrial and commercial properties. They're coming after single-family residential. I'm going to fight to make sure that our gas tax monies actually go into infrastructure to support housing projects. I'm going to lead the effort, as I'm doing right now, against restrictive mandates being imposed at the ballot box by defeating Measure A on this year's ballot. And
Thank you,
finally,
Paul.
in Washington, we're going to lift the SALT cap to give a little bit of tax relief for our mortgage payers in the state of California.
Thank you, Carl.
So California is the richest and poorest state in our union. And a large part of that is because of housing. In San Diego alone, 30% of renters pay every month 50% of their income. And I've talked to realtors who tell me it's a matter of inventory, and that's a very valid concern. So we have to start building, we have to cut through red tape and allow more building of housing. It's really critically important that we do that throughout our county and throughout our state. One of the things I want to make sure that we do that really frustrates me is that California is the #1 biggest funder of our federal taxes. We don't get out of the system what we put into it. We're 20th in HUD funding and 4th in terms of our homeless population. Second, in terms of our veteran homeless population. We need to see our own federal dollars come back to us. And then we will stand up to President Donald Trump and repeal the state and local tax deductions. We will make sure that you have your state and local tax deductions back for those people who are getting their marriage penalties and everything else. I don't know why you would do that in that room. Let me finish my sentence. And then give tax cuts for renters, and make sure people could refinance their homes, and a whole host of issues. Make sure the CFPB can allow responsible buyers, qualified buyers, to get access to capital. And make sure that we have the mortgage debt
Thank you, Omar.
forgiveness tax, again, reinstated now. So.
Thank you. The next question is also about housing. It's come up in this campaign. Should it matter to voters whether congressional leaders live in the district? Tell us yes or no, and please explain why. And you get to go first.
Yeah, I think you ought to live in the district you're trying to serve. You should be able to vote in the district you're asking people to vote for you in. And that's why when I get to Congress, I have a government reform bill, overturning Citizens United, getting big money out of politics, Live Where You Serve Act. I think these small things would allow us to make things happen. I know my opponents are going to say in 2022 the districts will change, but I don't think you get to just pick a district because it's convenient for you politically, or you couldn't stomach the ability to serve your district. I lost this seat when nearly half the voters voted for me in this district. I didn't give up on them. My mom taught me better than that. You fight for the people that you believe in, the people you grew up with. And I'm tired of politicians picking the voters and not voters picking their politicians.
Well, I think every single issue is going to be weighed in this campaign, and the #1 issue I think voters are looking for is someone who's going to be genuine on their positions, someone who's going to be dogged in their fight to advance those positions. They are sick and tired of career politicians that sell out. There is no address associated with sellouts. There is no address associated with fighters. The voters are looking for a fighter, not a quitter and a sellout. Let me also say, when I recalled State Senator Josh Newman from San Diego, people said, well, why are you going up to Orange County? Why don't you pick on one of your own state senators? And I said, you know, the politicians don't see the light until they feel the heat, and the only language they understand is when one of them loses their job. He cast the deciding vote on the gas tax and the car tax. He cast the deciding vote on the Sanctuary State Initiative, and he needed to be recalled from office, and we did it. The 5th successful recall of a state official in 104 years. We did it with no help from the institutional career politicians,
Thank you, Carl.
including someone on this stage, with the exception of Brian Jones. Thank you for helping us with that, Brian.
So someone asked me, what would I say if someone was misbehaving on this dais? And I'm saying, I have experienced issues in this campaign. I have gone to, I live in the 50th first. I've lived in Alpine since 2003. And I'm a strong supporter of the community. But when you hear people on this dais saying, oh yeah, I support this and I support that, but they're not going to the events. I've gone to Kumeyaay events consistently to support the Native American community. I go to veterans events. I go out and I actually broke my nose. I met the road and infrastructure issue campaigning. And so I know the community. And you need someone that understands the community, that lives there, and has a handle on the issues. Not someone who goes over their time in this forum. So I'm going to leave that alone and let you decide. But
Segue, you're out of time, Helen.
Yes, well, that's good.
Congressman?
I've already voted for myself in this district from my home in Bonsall. I've owned that home for more than 15 years. When the redistricting occurred, I certainly could have been in the 50th. More than a third of the 50th Congressional District was already in my historic district of 12 years at that point. I made a decision that I would take the less good seat. Young Duncan Hunter could take the better seat, and Brian Bilbray took the least good seat. Each of us could have justified a different seat. So I've never been somebody who went out and said, I'm going to take a better seat because it's there. I could have done that in 2012, and nobody would have been able to say anything. But no, I don't believe you need to live in the district. But like was just said, you need to have your heart in the district, your history in the district, and your willingness to visit and to do the things to serve the people in the district. Thank you.
My family moved to Santee in 1978 when I was 10 years old. My dad was a home builder in Colorado, and we came out here on vacation, and at that point in time, California was the Golden State, the land of opportunity, and was growing at rapid rates. Just as on a whim, he applied for 10 different jobs while we were here on vacation and was offered 12 different opportunities because things were happening at such a rapid rate. I've lived in this district for over 40 years. I've represented this district almost 20, if you count my time on the Santee City Council, 6 years in the Assembly, and now a year and a half in the Senate. I know this district. This district knows me. They know the voters last year when they overwhelmingly elected me to the state Senate knew what they were getting based on my voting record, my conservative, faith-based, family-oriented, freedom, liberty, voting record in Sacramento, and that's the expectations that this district has for Washington, D.C. This is one of the most.
Senator.
Thank you.
So
Henry.
the simple answer is absolutely. I looked through the offices for everything in California, federally. This is the only office you can run for without living in the district, by the way. I do want to address a couple things. So I'm a transplant. I'm not originally from San Diego. I've lived here 12 years over 6 periods of time. So something keeps pulling me back to this city. It's wonderful. All of you guys are real estate agents or involved in real estate. And without people moving from other places to this city, you don't have a lot of business. We don't have a 50th district. This is all dictated by population. So being born here or living here your entire life isn't some qualifying factor for being a representative of a specific district. So we just got to put that to rest. Yeah, you're right. You might have a different district. The odds are we're going to lose a district in California, and more than likely, it's going to end up being gerrymandered because the
Thank you, Henry.
conservatives still run the books. So we got to look at changing those laws.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll stay with you, Henry, is on homelessness. More than half of all unsheltered homeless people in the country live in California. And the Trump administration has suggested the federal government will soon take a much greater role in addressing this issue. What should the role of the U.S. government be to deal with homelessness? And what would your specific approach be as a member of Congress?
Okay, so the reality is the homeless population, the people living on the streets, is 5 states. It's California, Texas, Washington, New York, and Florida. Again, I have one goal, that is to end homelessness in America in 2 years. That would work through the implementation of a universal civilian service program. Being on the street is not an option. The first step we take is we open up the mental health facilities that were closed down in the late 80s and early 90s. We fully fund and operate those. Anybody who's caught on the street ends up at one of these facilities for a 90-day probationary period where we can do an evaluation and see what kind of cognitive resources they have. Everybody has the ability to get back to this country. So if we start with the homeless population, removing them from the streets and providing jobs and housing for them, we will stem off the people who are not homeless now. The 37-year-old lady who's about to lose her job, the 14-year-old kid who's going to turn to drugs. Those people will end up being homeless if we stick with the status quo. We need to take bold changes, guys.
Senator.
Thank you very much. The federal government's role in the homelessness issue, I think, is very limited. So let's before I come back to that, let's talk about the failure of Sacramento under the Democratic leadership from the Bay Area. One of the things that the governor and the leaders in the Democratic Party don't understand in California is the easier you make it to be homeless, the more homeless you're going to get. Thank you. I was like, duh, right? And so that's one of the things I'm, continuously fighting up in Sacramento. And my staff currently, even today, is researching a package of bills that we'll be unrolling hopefully next week, and just a limited number of bills to address some specific challenges with homelessness. But what can the federal government do? To be honest with you, I like Donald Trump's idea of taking the EPA and going after cities like San Francisco that are allowing this environmental crisis and this health crisis to happen under their watch, and have the EPA come in with sanctions and penalties. And you know what? We need to do that up and down the state. To every city that allows this problem to grow, the federal government has a role through the EPA and the health departments to come in and including sanctions and prosecution of the officials that have that happen.
Congressman.
Thank you. Well, since President Trump's name was mentioned, President Trump has been engaged in this issue. He has sent Ben Carson out, the secretary, who actually was here yesterday and was working with Interfaith and other organizations. He sent the CEO of, his name is Ralph Gaines, he's Ben Carson's #1 on this issue many, many times. But I think let's just look at it from a standpoint of not what the federal government can do, because the federal government is there to help the cities and the state. But here in San Diego, our mayor has proven that, in fact, he can do a better job than they're doing in Los Angeles and San Francisco by actually trying to cure it, to fix it, and to work with the organizations that are there, both faith-based and non-faith-based. So I think when we look at the first thing we have to do is stop going the wrong way, which is what San Francisco and LA are doing, and start at least working with the federal government. The hand will be out from the federal government, but you've got to be willing to take their help the way Mayor Faulkner has.
That's a minute, but I just want to ask a quick follow-up, because I didn't hear a specific proposal from you. What would you do as a congressman to help the homeless situation?
I would continue to make money available to the organizations like Solutions for Change and others that take people and transition them from not able to earn enough to live in a home or not able to understand the rules that will keep you in a home and get them out of that. Now, in some cases, you need to deal with drug addiction. In some cases, you need to be on medication that you're not taking. But in many cases, it is tools of life, living, and earning. And all of that is what the federal government needs to help those organizations do and not drive away any organization just because they're faith-based.
Thank you.
Our community is faced with the politics of demonization with regard to homelessness. Mr. DeMaio, in a public meeting forum, said, let's not call them homeless, let's call them vagrants. My heart broke because I am a veteran, and I think of all of the veterans who are borderline homeless, struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it shows a lack of knowledge of what the factors are. I've worked with the county on homelessness. David Estrella and I met specifically this past year to discuss homelessness issues. Omar Passons has an integrative service process for homelessness. We are collaborating already in the community for solutions. At the federal level, the VA is already working on homelessness issues for the veterans. And as a veteran and community advocate, I'm consistently pushing for change. We need to create the change within the community so that we're not looking at homelessness as a mental health problem.
Thank you, Helen.
Okay, thank you.
First and foremost.
Carl, wait 1 second. I'm going to give you 90 seconds because you were invoked.
First and foremost, while I address the issue, which is a very complex issue, go to my website, homelessactionplanca.org. It's our 4-point plan to actually deal with the homeless crisis. I think this is a unique thing about my campaign. I'm the only congressional candidate in the country whose campaign headquarters is located in a homeless shelter. Because I said Solutions for Change is saving lives, and I want people to be exposed to their model of success because we are literally funding failure at an epic rate in the state of California. We're throwing good money after bad. We need to stop coddling and we need to start caring. Coddling is saying, oh, you're homeless, let's do housing first. I'm not asking you to change your life in the drug abuse. I'm not asking you to deal with the issue of mental health. What I'm asking you to do is take the keys for a $900,000 per unit affordable housing unit under Housing First and don't change anything in your life. Take up that unit and then take that unit away from someone who may be willing to make the changes in their life to break that cycle of dependency. We need to start funding failure. Now, the congressman mentioned that he's going to continue to fund Solutions for Change. That's odd. Solutions for Change doesn't get a dime of government money because they don't allow people to continue to use drugs. They require that you stay clean and sober. So does the East County Transitional Living Center. And both Solutions for Change and East County Transitional Living Center have a substantially higher rate of success. I want to fund success, not failure. Go to my plan, homelessactionplanca.org. It begins with law enforcement and it ends with caring.
Pardon me.
Amar,
Are we allowed a rebuttal?
I'm going to give you 15 seconds.
Very, very quick rebuttal. I was there when Chris Magnuson had to turn that money back in. I was fighting against that, and I've continued to be, both when I was a congressman and still, an advocate to have housing first, not be housing only. So I think the gentleman is right. Solutions for Change turned it back in so they could continue their efforts the way they did, but I was at their side.
Thank you. Amar.
Can I?
Yeah, I think we have to dispel some myths. I find it fascinating. I know I'm not the only Christian in this room, but when Jesus says, what you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me, I take that seriously. So let's look at our homeless population. We are the second biggest veteran homeless population in the country. So when you see those homeless people, don't think about them as lowlives. They served our country. They give up their sanity for our freedom that we luxuriate under, number one. Number two, 80% of people who are homeless in this county are from San Diego. 15% of those who are homeless have mental illnesses. It's not just mental illness problems. Here's two things I would give you as an example. Number one, the first thing we need to do is we are 20th in HUD funding and 4th in need. We need to change and update the funding formula so we get more federal funding. Won't raise 1 penny of taxes if we just put ourselves from being 20th to 4th in HUD funding. Whoever's in 4th needs to get kicked off and get back to 20th or something. Number two, I helped somebody at when I was at the Department of Labor. I helped a homeless person down my street get access to a good-paying job. I thought that would change his life. It didn't. He needed housing, he needed wraparound services, and mental health. There's no silver bullet to the solution. We have to do everything. And what I did to actually get him off the street is I put him at the foot of the cross at my church. And the church works with nonprofit groups that got funding from the Department of Labor to work with different groups to get these people off their feet. So government can't do it all by itself, but it sure has a role to play.
May I interject?
May
No,
I
wait a
also?
sec.
This
Wait a sec,
subject
please.
is,
Wait a
is,
sec.
im-
Hold,
is
please.
important to me.
Hold, please. We're going to ask another question. We got to move on. We have a lot of questions and limited time.
Well, they got 90 seconds here,
Because
and,
they were
they're, and
mentioned, sir.
everybody's listing
My
off
next
some,
question is
some
to Amar.
falsehoods here to everybody.
My next question is to Amar, and it
Mr.
deals with
Hall,
the SALT
Mr.
repeal.
Hall, in fairness to everyone, if you give them 90 seconds, then everyone should
Yeah,
get.
Helen,
I just want
wait
a
1 second,
specific-
please. It's because they were mentioned by name. If you want to use part of your next allotted question to answer that, then you can. My next question is about the SALT repeal. It was evoked once. It's an important subject. President Trump's 2017 tax cuts limited the SALT deduction despite criticism in high-tax states like California. The cap is now $10,000 for both single filers and married couples filing jointly, but the House voted largely along party lines in December to raise and then repeal the cap in coming years. How would you have voted on that specific bill in December, and do you think the SALT deduction cap should be changed or not? Why?
It should be changed, absolutely. We should be able to not punish people who are the marriage penalty of if you file jointly, you only get the cap at 10,000. It should be extended to 20,000. And it's not a partisan issue. I know some of you are booing. I'm going to stand up for you against whoever's in the White House. It could be Trump or Bernie, whoever the hell it is. I look out for all of you. And if you want to boo that, that's fine. But I'm running for Congress to represent San Diego. It's not a partisan issue. There's two people on this stage who actually were against President Trump's tax plan, me and Congressman Darrell Issa. The one thing I'll give him credit for is that he stood up for California against President Donald Trump. That's the kind of leadership I'll bring, and I won't
Can you say that
shrug
again?
that responsibility. You can use it in an ad later. It's just
I
a
will.
fact. Here's the thing. Here's the honest truth. I am not running to kiss up to Donald Trump. I am running to represent all of you. That's the job. That's the job. So I am going to hold whoever's in the White House accountable. We will repeal that exemption or the limits on the SALT tax deductions because it helps people in our district, in our county, in our state. There's no wrong answer on this. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Carl?
The Trump tax cuts have saved annually the average homeowner in the 50th district $2,300 a year. That's real money that they can put back into their family priorities, although Sacramento politicians continue to try to take that money as quickly as they save it. But here's the thing. When the Democrats said, oh, but the SALT cap, let's deal with the SALT cap. You know what my motion would have been? Sure, call the question. Since you're ready to cut taxes, Democrats, hey, Republicans, gather round. You know what the response was? Well, maybe we won't be able to afford it. Then open up the damn budget. By the way, get the budget done on time. No budget, no pay. Take a red pen and pay for the lifting and the elimination of the SALT cap. It's not that difficult. You shouldn't be penalized for and taxed, really. You're being taxed on money you never received. The government already took that money, and then the feds come along and say, well, we're going to tax that as well. And Amar, how about we schedule a little meeting with your buddies in Sacramento? How about we just tell them to cut the damn taxes in California so we never actually hit the SALT cap?
Thank you, Carl.
So, and by the way,
Thank
the
you, Carl. You're out of time.
one last thing, the president supports a lifting of the
Excuse me.
SALT cap.
Helen, your turn.
Thank you, and I
Well,
really wish
he
you stopped
mentioned my
doing
name, but
this, going into other people's time. I support the elimination of the marriage penalty tax. I was married, I'm not anymore, but when we were filing joint returns under the SALT, it is very important, based upon the language of the TCJA, there's a need to have legislative modifications to stop marriage penalties. Marriage is an institution in our country, whether gay, straight, or otherwise. It is an institution. And there are other ways to cover the losses for taxes from the federal government, such as reducing costs of programs. I made a recommendation to save $55 to $110 million on one program for Department of Navy this in 2018, $4 million cost savings in FY17 for Army. I am there for you, and I'm running for Congress for you, not for these gentlemen, but for you. I'm in the district, and this includes veterans and other issues, and most of all, we need to look at how we're addressing issues with military sexual assault
Thank you,
and
Helen.
family issues.
And just
Thank you.
a quick follow-up. So SALT deduction cap should be changed, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Congressman,
Do I get 30 seconds for the fact that he mentioned my name?
I thought you said you didn't want it.
No, I did.
I'm going to give you 15.
Okay, great. Number one, you know that I don't support just raising taxes up to you know what in California. Me and you actually agreed on something.
Let's work on
there.
it.
And number two, if you want to work on it, run for governor, man. Half of this room does not understand why you're running for Congress. All
Yes.
your proposals are about California. Go run for, and then Jones in the Senate and help us reduce our taxes in California.
And the other half,
it.
and the other half of the room knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Congressman, that's a tough act to
Arithmetic.
follow, but it's yours.
You know, it's a pretty important question, and I'll take it very, very seriously. You don't easily tell Speaker Paul Ryan that you're not willing to support a bill in its current form, and when he says, well, I won't change it, you say that I won't vote for it. And yes, you can end up being the lone Republican voting no. But when I looked at that specific bill, there were good things in it, lots of good things in it, and I'm glad it passed in that sense. But ultimately, it was an unconstitutional principle. Taxes taken by the state are taken first. And when they're gone, you cannot count that revenue a second time. That principle, not just the dollars, but the principle was critical. And I told my party that they were making a mistake that they would live to regret in the years to come. And we're already looking at how to undo it. So the answer is, of course, I would lift the cap, because the basic principle of taxing people twice is wrong.
Thank you.
Agreed. Some bipartisanship here.
Senator,
Thank you. Yeah, when the original tax reform was being passed, I did support it as the former congressman from this district. And one of the most immediate results of that tax reform passing was high tax states, the leadership in the liberal Democratic parties in California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York. They immediately had a reaction, realizing that the federal government was no longer going to subsidize their high tax appetite. Now, fortunately, in some of those states, those legislators started to make some changes in their taxation policies. Unfortunately, California has still continued to go the other way. Now, I also recognize that it has disproportionately impacted Californians and California homeowners and earners. I do believe that the original tax reform, even though it may have impacted on the deduction, families gained other income through other economic means and either job increases or job raises, but I would also support raising the deduction.
thank you.
Just making sure nobody wanted to interject.
All you.
So I'm not a politician, so everything I'm going to say is going to be honest and from the heart. I benefit from the Trump tax plan. My properties are all in LLCs. I'm not married. I don't have any kids, don't plan on it, and I make a pretty good living. So that said, not everybody else is as benefits like I do. So I would be in line for a complete overhaul of the entire tax code and the way that we tax our citizens in the United States. But most importantly, the biggest thing we got to look at is where do we spend the tax dollars that we send to Sacramento or DC? That is where you have to start looking and do an audit of those numbers in order to understand what it is going to be required from us as citizens to contribute to live in a safe, prosperous,
Thank you, Henry.
beautiful, clean country.
Thank you. And staying with you, moving on to a subject of housing finance reform and a mortgage lending industry question. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac fell under federal conservatorship in 2008. How should they be reformed? Should these government-sponsored enterprises be regulated like public utilities? And this is no small issue. They collectively hold or guarantee almost 1/2 of all outstanding home mortgage debt. Start down here.
Well, that's a tough question to answer in 60 seconds. Look, I am in support of allowing them to go back to private capital, allowing them to have some freedoms. They've been holding a lot of funds tightly, but people have to understand that it's the secondary market and the Federal Reserve that is really controlling how those funds are distributed. Look, they've been trading between $1.70 and $3 for the last 10 years. Again, it's a loaded question. There's a lot more in the weeds. If you want to get wonky, we can sit down and have a 30-minute conversation about this, but to answer that question in 60 seconds is disingenuous.
You did it in 40. Nice job. Senator, your turn.
Well, I think it goes back to one of the number one rules of economics. As soon as the government involves itself in an economic transaction, it falls apart. Healthcare, higher education in the United States, and debt, college debt for students. All of these are issues because the federal government has intervened with the free market. And so I would support a complete reform of Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac, and they have to do one or the other. You either have to be completely privately funded or completely government-backed. But when you mix the two, that's when we get into the problems that we have now.
Thank you. 32 seconds. Congressman, can you do quicker than that?
I'll do my best. I fought the Freddie and Fannie takeover, but long before that, I was fighting the corruption that was going on there, multi-million-dollar salaries for their CEO, as in fact they were cooking the books. The reality is they were a major part of the meltdown. They were a major part of the crash that you all had to live through and the economic problems. There are some things that government does reasonably well. One of them is when we don't do something, but we look over the shoulder of those who do, we tend to be honest brokers. So if Freddie and Fannie were in fact split up into regional groups and a national commission, a federal oversight, was looking at them to make sure they were sound and solvent, properly run, and without corruption, we would have a real chance of an organization that borrows at T-bill rates and loans at market rate of finding a way to consistently make a profit, because they certainly should be able to. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen.
The level for FHA and the other loans, the Fannie Mae and so on, there's a level of support that will be based upon agency integration and costs. Having smaller government while creating programs and services that meets the needs of the consumer. Conceptually, I would support private partnerships, public-private partnerships, the impact of secondary markets, and ensuring that the long-term financial stability and availability to consumers is the primary reason for having these government agencies. We also need to look at the expense of the government agencies. Are we spending too much in support of something? But my main concern is for the consumers, the realtors, and other individuals in the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl?
I think there's widespread agreement that we have to continue to have reform and oversight of Freddie and Fannie, but it raises the larger issue. You have politicians who literally are what I call arsonist firefighters. They create a crisis, they create a problem, and then they gallop in saying, well, look at what we found. Who did this? The housing crisis was caused by politicians who kept pushing the fast and easy money. People who should never have been able to purchase the homes that they were in, and you were setting them up to dash their hopes and destroy their finances for decades. And so whether it's the housing crisis, whether it's the healthcare crisis where we impose regulations on healthcare providers and see the costs go through the roof and we say, why is it not affordable to have a medical procedure? Or opioids. In the 1990s, the federal government said we're going to judge and grade physicians on pain management. And so the physicians were trying to hit those performance metrics and they started prescribing a bunch of things. And lo and behold, we have an opioid crisis in this country.
Thank
And
you,
now
John.
the politicians are saying, arsonist firefighter time, I'm going to gallop in and solve it. So yes, we need reform, but we need to, as Brian
Thank
Jones
you.
pointed out, deal with the mentality of the failure of government intrusion.
Thank you. Amar?
Yeah, it's a long question, but I agree with the National Association of Realtors on this. When it comes to the government sector enterprises, we need to have government chartered authorities to oversee it. There should be participation with private capital. As much as I could get into in 30 seconds, but that's where I stand.
That was actually 12.
Yeah.
So,
Damn. Can I have his time?
let me do this. Let me move on to a next question. Thank you for tackling a difficult subject with some thought. This next issue is the Equality Act.
Mm-hmm.
Federal fair housing laws prohibit discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, and national origin. The Equality Act would explicitly bar discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity as well. Would you support that legislation? Why or why not? And Amar, you can go first.
Yeah, absolutely. My question is, would my opponents here support it? Absolutely. I think you should not be discriminated on housing or anything else. I'm Christian. I don't want someone to deny me because I say Merry Christmas to them or something like that. So it should be absolutely, there should be no discrimination based on your sexual orientation, your religious beliefs, or anything like that. And we should not discriminate from people based on their sexual orientation, not gender orientation, based on for housing or anything else like that.
Yes.
So.
Congressman? Do you want to take 15 seconds to reply to that? I'm not sure what that was.
Nah.
Okay.
He knows what I was talking about.
Carl?
Well, look, it's called the golden rule. Treat others as you'd like to be treated yourself. And all too often in the partisan divide of politics, we forget the golden rule. And there's a whole lot more agreement when we start with that as our fundamental foundation. I support the Fairness for All Act, which takes into play all the non-discrimination provisions that we're trying to achieve, but says that we also need to be mindful of those with religious conviction. First Amendment protects religious freedom. And we have to start saying that if we are going to treat people with dignity and respect, it includes our faith-based communities as well. And that's how this should be done. We shouldn't be ostracizing or dividing any community. We should be coming together and saying, treat all as you would like to be treated yourself.
Thank you. So to be clear, that's, you do not support the Equality Act, or you do support the Equality
I
Act?
support fairness for all.
Okay.
And that's legislation that is in the Senate and the House.
So that's a no, to be clear, on the Equality Act.
Well, if you know about Fairness for All, are you aware of it?
I am.
It actually incorporates the protections of Equality Act, but goes further to ensure that we have religious freedom and
Got it.
religious freedom
I
protections.
just want to get you on the record. Thank you.
And that's why both the faith-based community
Thank you.
and the civil rights community support Fairness
Thank you.
for All.
Helen?
Thank you. First off, in the East County Magazine, I wrote an article about the Equal Rights Amendment, and I hope that you will go to that article and read about equal rights for women and men. I've been promoting equal rights for all. And one of the problems that I've been reading lately is House Bill 5, where Senator Jones is not supporting equal rights, and that hurts my heart because I'm a Christian and I believe that all people should be afforded the same opportunities across the board, regardless of religion, sexual orientation, and all the other reasons. And it's not an issue of bathrooms. It's an issue of equal rights for everyone in housing and every other thing that is covered under HB 5. And I hope that you will support that measure and support me. Thank you very much.
Congressman?
I fought the Obama administration when, after they passed the Affordable Care Act, with all kinds of claims that they were not going to use it as a leverage against faith-based organizations, specifically churches, they did just the opposite. And it was an outright attack in which I held a hearing as chairman that included high-ranking members of the clergy. And in fact, the Democrats screamed bloody murder because they said it was wrong not to make sure that we understood that their issue was more important than the religious freedoms that our country was formed on. So the answer is, no, I'm not going to support some approach that is not a constitutional change and very clearly could then become a leverage, like Obamacare, to have an attack on faith-based organizations. Thank you.
Senator?
I'm going to pass on responding to the HB 5 comment, and if I can just explain real quick, we have 2,000 bills this year. We have Senate bills, which are SBs, and Assembly bills, which are ABs, so I'm not sure what the HB is, but I'm willing to have an off-dais dialogue.
How about the concept?
Regarding that.
Want to weigh in on the concept?
Oh, yeah, on the specific question, I will answer. So on the Equality Act, my understanding is it's not in its final form. It's being debated. I believe, as has been mentioned already previously, there's many pitfalls in that particular piece of legislation. So as currently written, I would not support it. But I think this audience knows, and the voters in the 50th Congressional District know, my history as an ardent defender of the First Amendment for all people, an ardent defender of the Second Amendment for all people, and I will continue that track record in Washington, D.C. to make sure that the U.S. Constitution works for all Americans and all residents in the United States that are here legally. That's why the U.S. Constitution was set up. That's why it's the greatest document ever written by man, and I will defend it till my death.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, again, I'm not a politician, so I'm not familiar with every aspect or bill that's out there. I'm focused on one thing, and again, that is uniting the country. So first off, I just want to address something you said. She's correct. The Equal Rights Amendment still hasn't been passed. I don't think anybody should be excluded from anything based on race, sexual orientation, gender, whatever they want to identify with moving forward. There's just too much polarization. That is why, with the implementation of my Universal Civilian Service Agreement, when we get young people and old people from all over the country working together to make this country a better place, we start to pull down the walls that divide us. We won't be as partisan. We won't be having these bickering fights because we're standing on one side of one aisle and one side of the other aisle. Everybody is really more in the middle. It just turns out that we go to one talking point that we got from our preferred news organization while the other person's got a talking point, and we just shout over each other instead of having a civil conversation and getting things done and making this country a better place moving forward. Yes, I don't think anybody should ever be, scrutinized based on any of their beliefs unless they're a Red Sox fan.
Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions, so let's see if we can get to two. Infrastructure?
Time up?
Someone got to leave the stage? It'll give us time for another question, maybe. Infrastructure. Communities thrive when infrastructure issues are minimal. What is the most pressing infrastructure need in the 50th Congressional District, and how would you address it? Henry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I do have one issue that we all can agree on. For the last 40 years, we've got sewage coming from Mexico to our waterways. I know it's not in the 50th district, but it affects everybody in the 50th district as well as any other district in San Diego. So I'll do whatever I need to do to convince the Trump administration, if they're still there, a Sanders or a Bloomberg administration, if they're still there, that we need $500 million, 4 years, and we can take care of this. We can move on. We don't have to argue about it with each other anymore. It's that simple. It's $500 billion or $500 million, $500 million. There's $29 billion that Trump's trying to get for his border wall. I don't think it'll be too difficult to convince him that this section of his border wall will be the most impenetrable because it'll have a moat with alligators.
Thank you. Senator?
Well, living in the district and driving on our freeways and getting text messages from my wife at 6:30 or 7:30 in the morning as she's trying to get out of the city of Santee and go run her business. One of the top issues in the 50th Congressional District is Highway 52. If you sit on that freeway in the mornings trying to get out of East County or in the evenings trying to get back into East County, you're probably just as frustrated as I am about it. Also, Highway 78 and Highway 67 are probably run just in line with Highway 52. Those are the biggest infrastructure needs we have right now. And really, again, the government participation is limited, probably just to funding at this point in time. But there is a lot of questions about how Sandag is operating their business right now. And maybe we might need to have a federal audit on the federal dollars that are going to Sandag and make sure that they're being spent properly.
Thank you, Senator.
And I've already called for a state audit for Sandag, so we're working on that.
Congressman.
Senator Jones said it, in this case, exactly the way it should be said. Sandag has, in fact, not lived up to its obligation for North County and East County, and the 50th Congressional District is particularly impacted. When you get to the 1578, you see it. when you saw how many extra years it took to complete the 76, because not once but twice they went ahead and ran out of money, even though they had told the voters that project would be done with the money they voted. You know, voters have been voting extra taxes on themselves and then being betrayed by the very programs they're promised not getting done. So for people living in East County, North County agrees with you. For people living in North County, trust me, East County feels the same pain. Thank you.
Helen.
Prior to, is my mic working? Okay, prior to breaking my nose, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Prior to breaking my nose in October 11th, the mayor of San Marcos said to me, Helen, please make sure that the roads, bridges, and infrastructure for that is taken care of. And she gave me a good education on Sandag. And I'm in agreement with the fact that we need to go through and check where the government grants are coming from, because the federal government gives grants, filter down through the states to the local agencies such as Sandag to fix the roads and the infrastructure. But it's also more than that. Make sure we have the right people in place in Sandag and in other agencies that are monitoring this. Kristen Gaspar and I know each other personally from the work I do for the Board of Supervisors, and she is consistently harping on Sandag. And we don't need $93 million of bike paths in East County or North
Thank you,
County
Helen.
rural. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carl.
Matt, I think you asked the wrong question, because the answer to your question is roads. The question should have been, how will you, as the next congressperson in the 50th district, deal with the roads crisis that we have in that district and throughout our region? Talk is cheap. Action is everything. You hear politicians for 20 years say, oh, we got to fill the potholes and we got to fix the roads, and what we need from you is we need more of your money to do it. Baloney. You've been taking our gas tax money, you've been not putting it in the roads, you've been putting it into your own pet projects, and it needs to end. That was the fuel behind our gas tax repeal rebellion, and we will not stop until we get that done. But I'm not going to just stop there. In the past year, we have worked with Jim Desmond and Kristen Gaspar and a coalition of local elected officials to stop Sandag from stealing our Transnet money. And that coalition has held together because we were able to hold the politicians' feet to the fire. We were filing a ballot measure in April. We released the text and the concepts of it that would basically tell Sandag not another penny from Transnet until you get the roads done. And finally, federal gas tax, 100% of federal gas tax ought to go to road projects with criminal audits associated with the expenditures.
Thank you. Amar?
Yeah, so I live on a dirt road in Hamul, and my stepfather's lived there for time immemorial. He probably won't like that, but he's old. And he's told me the promise of infrastructure reform has been a dirt road since Reagan, Bush, Obama, everybody, and it's still a damn dirt road. And people don't trust government because a dirt road might not be your dirt road. It might be healthcare or something else. But politicians lie, and we need to hold them accountable. So here's what I want you guys to understand. It's not a joke. In Alpine, there are kids, they don't have a high school in Alpine. They'll commute to the nearest high school. And there are kids who aren't ready to drive on those roads and they die. This is a reality that we face in our district. If you lived in my district, you would understand. If you don't, you should come by. I was so pleased to see bipartisanship between Trump and the Democrats on a $2 trillion investment in infrastructure. The question is how? The president's plan, even Republicans don't like. It's about forcing it on the local governments to sell public assets and have gas taxes like we have in California. It's time that California got back the funds that we spend in the federal government. We pay more federal taxes than any other state in the union. We're done being double taxed on services that we should have gotten the first time from the federal government.
Thank you.
So hopefully if I'm in Congress, we will render the gas tax obsolete in California and have a federal infrastructure bill that we could lead in a bipartisan fashion.
Thank you. I'm going to try for one last question and then give you your closing statements. This one's on jobs and the economy. There's a big opportunity to push for more economic diversification in the district, starting with a stronger tech presence along Interstate 15. How would you specifically boost jobs in the district, and which industries do you think have the greatest potential in the district? Amar.
Yeah, so when I was at the U.S. Department of Labor, on my last day there, I wrote President Trump a memo. I do work with the president when I can. I want to do jobs and infrastructure and trade. He's not all bad, but a broken clock's right twice a day, so even Democrats might be good for you Republicans, right? I might be one of those people, so give me a shot. I told the president there's a program that sounds like his TV show. It's called Apprenticeship. Why don't you do what you always do? Take something that already exists and put your name on it and make it great again. Invest in apprenticeship programs, vocational training to help build these houses that you're going to be selling to your clients. That's what we could do. It's an alternative to college. It's college without the debt. The average apprentice makes $70,000 a year. The average person in my district makes less than $30,000 a year. So if you want to fix the housing crisis and the affordability problem, give people $70,000 a year. Earn while they learn. All of a sudden, they could afford the market price of housing, healthcare, and education. That's how we solve this problem. There's 7 million job vacancies in this country. There's 6.2 million people looking for work. There's more jobs than people looking for work. They're not all good jobs, but some of them pay a really good wage. You can earn and learn in this country. We could rebuild our middle class and get people moving again on the economy.
If you want to have a prosperous economy, you need to do two things. You got to cut the cost of living for our workers. You got to cut the cost of operating for our businesses. You cut the cost of living for our workers, they can enjoy life better, and it's more affordable to run a business in California. AB 5, for example, will destroy the cost of workers in the state and lead to less opportunities for working families. The cost of operating in this state, if we make the taxes, the regulations, the mandates, the environment restrictive, no one is going to invest in expanding the job base out here. So the most important thing we can do is to be single-minded on the cost crisis in our state. This is the most expensive place to live on the planet, and yet we have so many blessings in our state. We've done this to ourselves. Imagine what California can be with our beautiful environment, with our wonderful educated workforce, if we just got the hell out of the way.
Thanks,
It's the
Carl.
politicians that are keeping us down. That needs to change.
Thank you.
First, HB 5 means House Bill 5. Everyone should know what HB is as far as candidates. But I want to talk to you about something really important. The child care in our community is an expense that is hurting our community. Women and families are paying $250 to $300 a week for an infant. We are supporting an effort by Navy to bring child care into the civilian community, and that is really important. It's a public-private partnership. We're working to bring jobs in through immigration by changing immigration standards to have those hard-to-fill jobs come in through immigration, through proper methods of immigration. And there are a huge number of unqualified labor positions that need to be filled, and we're having a shortage in the federal government, in the economy on those positions.
Thank you,
So,
Helen.
Thank you.
Congressman?
Well, I think each of the people that have spoken so far have been accurate in the sense of describe the problem. The problem is the state with the best product for technology, for advancement, for our defense, for generations, simply has let the product tarnish. There's a reason that this state grew and had a new congressman every 10 years for its entire history until 10 years ago. And then it didn't get a new one, and now it's going to get one less. We have stopped being the product we should be. The advantage we have as a state is if you just stop being stupid in policies and in fact address the reasonable cost versus benefit, we can change that. Our schools, unfortunately, rate in the 49 and 50, not in spending, but in accomplishment. We need to, in fact, quite frankly, polish up the product, and then, in fact, we will succeed. Infrastructure is
Thank
part
you,
of it,
Congressman.
but very clearly, education is part of it.
Thank you.
Jobs and economy and small business has kind of been my legislative expertise since I've been in the state legislature. Of my 26 bills that have been passed with Democrat-controlled Assembly and Democrat-controlled Senate and signed by 2 different Democrat governors, most of my bills deal with small business regulatory reform to help small businesses succeed and stay in California. Because I know that small businesses are the key linchpin to our economy in California, and most of you are a small business. And one of the things that we need to do is help you succeed by getting the government out of your way in the lending principles of the real estate economy, getting the government out of the way of building in the real estate economy, getting government to approve projects faster so you can get your stuff built faster and sold faster and get the return on your investment faster. So those are all things that we can work on together to help happen. And I'm really excited about going to Congress and being in Washington, D.C. so I can serve on the committees that are going to help our biocom industry here in San Diego, which is one of the best economies in
Thank you,
the
Senator.
country, and the blue economy down on the Bay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question for me? It got lost in translation by the time
Yeah.
it got to me.
Yeah. How would you boost jobs in the district, and which industries do you think have the greatest potential in the district?
Okay, so this is where I'm probably going to lose the one person that's following me right now. You've probably all heard of this guy. His name is Andrew Yang, the Yang Gang. It's called Math People, and I am behind a universal basic income, and it is attached again to the only initiative that I'm looking to push, which is a universal civilian service program. So you go through this program, you serve 2 years under a variety of different things. It's not military based. You could join the military and fall within these categories as well. There's infrastructure, environmental task force, homeland security, agriculture, education, healthcare, forestry service. The list continues to go on. So with that, you will have a guaranteed universal basic income once you come out. Now, we hope you go into the private sector and you find a job, but you will always have those dollars to fall back on. Now, as an entrepreneur, there is not one business that I've never gone to start because there was too much regulation. I found a way to work around those regulations and create the business that I wanted to start to begin with.
We got a hard out with the mayor's coming up, so I'm going to start closing statements. Take it away.
Well, see, I get to keep speaking. Great. I thank everybody here. Again, I am not a career politician, a career candidate. I'm up here because I have one goal in mind, and that is to end homelessness in America and help break the divides that every one of you seem to have and every one of us on this stage seems to have with each other. It is a crazy time in the world. I want to remind everybody here and everywhere in California that on March 3rd, you are not voting to elect a representative. You're voting to listen to 2 more people and their ideas for the next 8 months, okay? So keep that in mind when you cast your vote, when you go to your mailbox and you see all of those wasted flyers that are being printed, or you're watching your news broadcast and you see commercials over and over again. I promise not to come back until September.
Senator.
Well, I got 2 things to give props to Henry for. First thing I wanted to give props to Henry was on the tax reform question. He's right. The entire tax code, IRS code, everything needs to be reformed and redone and reestablished. So, and then I'll give him props on that last statement about who do you want to listen to for the next 8 months? I want to congratulate Carla on being the new president here at SDAR. I'm excited about working with SDAR. She comes on the heels of some very great people that have done a good job, and I know she's going to show them all up and do even far better than her predecessors as far as being president and do a great job. Your board of directors here work very hard every day to make sure that you have the best opportunity to build your business in San Diego, and you have my commitment to continue working with them. Your association is probably one of the ones I work the closest with, and you are a pillar of stability in the state of California, that when all the other associations are falling apart, and I don't mean just realtor associations, all other kinds of associations are advocating for things that are harmful to our economy, you guys fight the good fight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I'm the second of 6 children, so I'm used to being a middle child for every single question in this case. And for the closing, it'll be no different. I brought a prop here tonight to close with. This is the pen that President Trump gave me several, but in this particular case, he signed for me to serve in his administration not once, but twice. It caused me to leave Congress, and I'm sad that the Senate did what the Senate's been doing, which is obstructing so many of the president's nominees. But I'm not going to let that get me down. When this became a clear opportunity to do the right thing for the president, for our country, and for the district I love so much, and when I say the district, I mean San Diego and Riverside County. So it's an honor to be considered to return. I believe with my 18 years of experience and seniority, since I go right to the top of key committees, and people like Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and others have not only endorsed me, but I will be working with those individuals
Thank you, Congressman.
and the president. I hope that I'll have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank the Realtor Association for inviting me. I am very happy to be here. I am here because I'm sick and tired of partisan politics. When I go out in the community and I actually walk the district and listen to constituents, they are looking for a change in how we do business. I have 22 years of federal government operations experience. As I previously mentioned, I have a great wealth of knowledge as a psychologist, and we need a psychologist in Congress at this point for what's going on. But I also want to tell Omar, thank you very much, because Omar and I follow each other's Twitter, and we have had some laughs on the behaviors of these individuals. And so I'm here for you, for the community. I want you to have fun. I want you to be excited. I can't be bought. I can't be bought, and that's something you should remember. I will not be bought, and I will continue to have fun with all of you. Thank you very much, and have a blessed afternoon. I'm excited for all of us. Vote for me.
Thank you. Carl.
When President Trump decided to run for president, he gave up the best job of his life for the worst job in many respects. I'm doing the same. I loved our afternoon conversations, 3 to 6, on the topics that people care about. I know that going to Washington, trying to drain the swamp, having President Trump's back in the battles that he has to face day in and day out, it's going to be difficult. But I believe it's necessary, because the voters of the 50th, the voters of California, they want a fighter, not a sellout, not a quitter. I don't believe that you can buy a congressional district. I believe you earn it, one contribution at a time, one vote at a time, and that's why I'm thrilled to see the grassroots energy behind my campaign. I pledge to you this: I will never back down. I will always fight for you. That is the sort of leadership, that is the sort of service that you deserve in Washington and throughout the state of California.
Thank you, Carl. Amar.
Thank you all. How many of you live in the district? Just raise your hand real quick. All right, so most of you are just in the nosebleeds. Okay, we're always the afterthought, East County and the 50th. We need to change that. So look, I'm running for Congress because I want to put country over party and people over politics. Not just a slogan, but I've pissed off my fair share of Democrats and Republicans running for Congress in the past 3 years. I'm not bought by either party. But I do think that San Diego as a region, as a county, is on the precipice of greatness. We have a military here that's second to none. We have a biotech industry. We have the hardest working people. We could harness that to usher us into the next generation of greatness. I really respect a lot of my colleagues on here, but the present belongs to the future. We cannot go back to the ways of the past. We have to move forward together. And I want to tell you something. I have to say this as a disclaimer. I'm a Democrat, but I don't believe in opening up the border. I don't believe in taking your guns away. I own guns. And I don't believe in racking up the national debt, because my generation's going to have to pay it down. We're going to be on the receiving end of climate change, of soul-crushing debt, and of education system that doesn't lead to good-paying jobs, not because of immigration, but automation. If you care about your children in the future, please, please vote for me. You've invested in my education. Let me give back all that you've given back to me. Thank you so much.
As I said, we got a tight turnaround. Let's give it up for the best undercard in the history of undercards. Right here. These people are great. Thanks, y'all. Sit tight and we'll start the mayor's debate in just a handful of minutes.
This is it, isn't it? Oh, are they? Oh, I didn't know that.
They buying the strings?
What was that? Like
The radio guys buying it.
Alan Frank.
1 minute. Yeah. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, you guys. Who wants to grab a seat? This is the main event, right? Come up close, come up close. There's no need to sit in the back of the bus for this one. The format for this one is going to be slightly different. I'm going to call the candidates up here in a second. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with the candidate to my immediate left with opening remarks. And then for the first question, we're going to go to the candidate to their left. And then down and down and down. Because I think Darrell Issa made a fair point when he said he kind of got stuck in the middle for some of these questions. So we're going to do that a little bit differently. But why don't we all give a round welcome to our mayoral candidates. And I'm going to call you up alphabetically, starting with Gita Applebaum. Barbara Bree. Todd Gloria. I'm sorry. Richard Ryle. Scott Sherman. And Tasha Williamson. Is Tasha here? Not here? Is she a little delayed? Do you know when she's going to get here? She's not here responding. Okay. Well, we'll get started, and she can jump in when she gets here. I know we have a hard out, and I got a newspaper to put out, so those deadlines are real.
Technicality.
Let's start with 1 minute for opening statements, and then the format, just so you all know here. Q&A, we will have 1 minute to respond. I'll keep my time here on my phone. And if your name is mentioned, you'll get 30 seconds to respond. I'll have the discretion to ask a follow-up, and opening and close will be 60 seconds as well. If your name is mentioned, if you mention someone else in an opening or closing statement, you will not get a chance to rebut. Those are hard time frames. So Gita, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Gita Applebaum Singh. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I own my own nonprofit. I come into this race because I really want to help be a part of fixing the problem here in San Diego. We have many, many issues. Our homeless population is over the top. I want quality of lives for everybody. As a medical provider, I can personally diagnose and treat our homeless population. And I want to say that homelessness doesn't look as somebody who is on meth or have mental health. Homelessness it goes a wide strata of all of us. Each one of us can be homeless in one paycheck. So myself, I'm a mom, I'm an athlete, I'm an intellectual, I'm an adjunct professor at 3 universities locally, at City College, Azusa, and National University. I personally want to provide a PhD in law for our people here in San Diego, free. I want to support universal health care. I want to end homelessness. I want rent control. I want affordable homes. I want tiny
Thank you,
homes.
Gita. That's a fast minute.
Thank you.
Barbara.
Happy Valentine's Day. My Valentine's Day started with a second series of TV ads funded by a committee supporting Mr. Gloria, a committee funded by 3 labor unions, attacking me for my vote to first vote support legislation on short-term rental legislation and then to rescind it. It is true, I did vote to rescind after the industry spent over $1 million collecting signatures, and I didn't want to see a costly election battle. And by then, our city attorney had issued a memo that short-term rentals are illegal in residential neighborhoods. So I have repeatedly called on the mayor to simply enforce our existing laws, which is what I will do as mayor. It is time to have a mayor who enforces the existing law. If we need more
Thank you,
hotel
Barbara.
rooms, we should simply build them where hotels belong. And
Thank
I
you.
call on Mr. Gloria today to denounce this deceptive ad.
Todd.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Todd Gloria. I have the honor of representing San Diego in the California legislature, and I'm running for mayor of San Diego. I'm running for mayor as a third-generation native San Diegan because I know where our city has been. As the son of a hotel maid and a gardener, I know just how hard it is to make ends meet in a town as expensive as San Diego. But more importantly, I have a vision for where I'd like to take us. Broadly speaking, I think our biggest challenge as a city is that we are a big city that too often operates like a small town. When we talk endlessly about problems like scooters and vacation rentals, issues that they are true issues, but not the biggest issues in the city. We can't solve them when so many other cities have. Ignoring big issues like homelessness, housing affordability, and our infrastructure. We never get to the big issues because we're too busy chasing our tail on the small issues. I want to be a mayor that acts decisively, that takes on the big issues, solves the small issues, and moves us forward, allows us to embrace what we have become, which is the 8th largest city in the United States, the 2nd largest in California. It's time that we start acting like it. Let's move the city forward.
Thank you. Rich?
It is a joy to address my fellow realtors. If you look at the schedule that you have from the San Diego Associated Realtors, of which I was a member, I've been a real estate broker, a loan officer. I've worked for Contreras Brothers Construction Development Company. I worked for the San Diego Housing Commission. I know housing, I know real estate. Now, I don't want you to remember my name. That'll make me different than the three we have up here running for office right now. I want you to remember my ideas. I'm going to solve the homeless problem, and I'm going to solve the housing problem, and I'm going to do it with an idea that has been 40 years in the making, that is stop the sale of city-owned land. Had I been elected mayor in 1983 when I ran, we would have had a charter amendment stopping the sale of city-owned land, and the 40,000 acres that we have since given away to the developers would have stayed with the city of San Diego, just like the Port District. I have less than 6 seconds to go. Rich Ryle, stop the sale of city-owned land.
Scott?
Thank you. It's good to be here in front of the Realtors again. I appreciate your endorsements in the past, and hopefully we'll have your support going forward for my mayor's race. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a San Diego native. Well, almost a native. My father moved here when I was 4 months old after he got out of the 101st Airborne in Fort Campbell. He opened up a real estate business. My mom opened up an escrow company. And then after being a single dad for quite a while, I started up a little business at age 28 to get into the insurance world. Grew that from 3 people up to about 40. Started getting involved in the charity world, and then I found the community asking me to run for city council. We ran for council the first time in 2012, won that election by 54 votes, so make sure you get out and vote in 18 days because every single solitary vote matters. And have been at City Hall speaking common sense over nonsense and truth to power, talking about things that affect San Diego on a daily basis, housing, homelessness, those
Thanks,
types
Scott.
of issues.
Tasha, that was impeccable timing.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a work thing, so I work. And I have to leave shortly after this. We have deadlines. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Sorry that I've rushed in, but I'm one of the candidates, and I believe to be one of the realest candidates that's talking about things that matter to people. Not wanting to shelve any more plans with inaction. Making sure that we are getting to the business of talking about why we're wasting money, wasting time, and also damaging people's lives. And so this is what my campaign has been about, to make sure that people are informed on the lives that have been lost because this city has wasted time not having action on a climate action plan, wasted time not managing and maintaining people's businesses like the Glider Park, wasting energy, time, and money. And when we look at, thank you.
Thank you. And just because you came in a little bit late, so the ground
It's okay.
rules,
He
Tasha.
just told me 1 minute.
All right, 1 minute, all right. Thank you guys for hitting your marks. Barbara, the first question to you is on housing supply. City officials say the number of housing units built each year will need to triple for San Diego to meet a state-mandated goal of 108,000 new units by 2029. Meeting that target would require an average production of 13,500 units a year compared to 4,100 units built per year in the city since 2010. What specifically would you do to facilitate middle-income housing, which is the most underdeveloped category?
Thank you. As you know, we're building plenty of housing at the upper end that's $1 million, and we're building subsidized housing at the lower end. What we're missing is housing for working families, school teachers, police officers, librarians. And as a council member, I have voted to update community plans around transit. So in the Midway, Morena Boulevard, Mission Valley area, we can build more density, which can lower the cost per unit. In addition, the short-term rental issue is important. It was 8,000 units a few years ago. It's 16,000 now, plus hundreds of apartments and a growing number of apartments. And this number is only continuing to increase. And if we don't do something to rein this in, we're going to have to build even more new housing units. And many of these units are in transit areas. So this is important for the next mayor to enforce our existing law and return these units to the marketplace for long-term San Diegans to live in.
Thank you. Todd?
So I appreciate the focus on middle-income housing, because I don't think we can be a great city if we're just a place for the very wealthy who can afford to live here and the very poor who are trapped here. The way that we can address this beyond updating community plans and providing regulatory certainty for those who wish to develop, we have to target some concentrated policies in that middle-income area. We've done it for low-income housing. I think some of those strategies can be used for middle income. What do I mean? We have an affordable housing trust fund. I think we should create a middle-income housing trust fund. We provide priority processing and permits for affordable housing developers, but we should do the same front-of-the-line privileges for those who want to build in the working and middle-class space. And I think we can use public land to facilitate the growth of housing in this particular arena. You've seen me do this by carrying state legislation to convey the state building in downtown to the city of San Diego for the production of low and moderate income housing. When you take the land costs out of the deal, a lower rent or lower for sale price should be reflected for the end consumer. I think utilizing public lands more effectively for low and moderate income housing, an affordable housing, a middle income housing expedite, and a middle class housing trust fund would be three key ways that we can move the needle when it comes to producing homes that everyday San Diegans can afford.
Thank you. Rich?
Ladies and gentlemen, the idea is land. The major cost in building anything in San Diego is land. It's 25% of all sales prices. The way the developers work is they buy the land under one land use, then they put it together and they go to city council and they say, we'll build more units and that'll bring the housing down. So if you approve the increased density, we'll do it. It doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen. What we need to do is when they come to us and say, we've got this land, we say, great. You sell it to us, we'll lease it back to you, and you can now sell it at 25% below market rate. That will not only provide instantly lower cost housing, but overall it will drive the housing costs down, because when you have lower cost housing, the whole market goes down. This is important. We need a charter change to stop the developers taking our land, which they have done for the last 40 years. Lease it. Don't sell it.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, the easiest way to make sure we produce more middle-income housing is to let government get out of the way. 47% of the cost of building housing in this city is government regulation and red tape. That gets passed along to the consumer, ensuring that we have houses that are built are nothing but luxury units. We have the low-income density bonus, and we taxpayer-subsidized housing. We're getting a lot of production there. What you need to do is what we did in Grantville. You need to have a specific plan that allows for density in an area with incentives and certainty for developers to develop a certain type of housing. We have 2,000 units coming online in Grantville already. 30% of that is affordable housing. It can be done, not by mandates, not by increasing fees, but by incentives and certainty and getting out of the way. Both of my kids and my grandkids live in a different state because they can't afford to be here because of the government policies that assured us where we are. Government policies create haves and have-nots, and we're not concentrated on the middle.
Thank you. Tasha?
Yeah, thank you. So we have a current government and a previous government that has always separated and divided us with haves and have-nots. What we need to do is we need to become landlords. What it shows in the data is that when city and municipalities become landlords, they drive down the price of rents. We need to stop being driven by special interests. We need to collect data. We need to make sure that we are doing the right things by the right people. Yes, we need to have transit hubs. Yes, we need to do everything that was asked for in the Green New Deal and the Climate Action Plan around housing. We need to think about everyone when we think about housing. But we have been a city that has allowed everyone to come in with a key and no regulation. We need to stop doing that. That is not the way we do business. We need to consider everybody when we're representing everyone at these seats.
Thank you. Gita?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What specifically would you do to facilitate middle-income housing, which is the most underdeveloped category?
Personally, I want to see tiny homes for everybody. I feel our class separates us, and I want to see tiny homes for every San Diegan. That is, I've been a middle-income person, but in San Diego, there are people working 2 to 3 jobs that can't pay their rent and becoming homeless. I don't want to be, I live close to Rancho Santa Fe and places like that. It's deplorable that we have these big, huge mansions. So, middle-class people, let's scale down a little bit. Let's scale down a little bit. Let's share the wealth. Let's share the land, share our property. I'm into tiny homes, I'm into cannabis, I'm into reinvesting in our community and providing equal jobs, equal education, and possibilities for everybody. That's why I want to be your mayor of San Diego.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next question to you, Todd, first, on housing affordability. A 2015 Point Loma Nazarene University study estimated regulations add 45% to San Diego City housing prices. What would you try to do beyond attempting to build more units to make homes and apartments more affordable?
It's great, and I have a lot of respect for Lynn Reeser in Point Loma Nazarene. She does amazing work. What we can do? Well, first off, I think that what we can do, and this is legislation I've done at the state level, is to go from a per unit basis of assessing the fees to a square footage basis. I think that would incentivize the construction of more homes that are smaller. It doesn't de-incentivize the per unit of getting more density in these communities where we need them, specifically near transit and near jobs. I think that's one way to do it. I think additionally we have to always make sure that there are true nexus between the fees that are assessed and their actual what they can actually yield back to the community. I think it's more of an art than a science. I think there's some legal problems that are in there. And ultimately, I think that we have to make sure that the cost of our infrastructure is borne by everyone, not just new home buyers. I think that that is an inequity that provides a higher barrier to folks actually being able to buy a home. And again, I don't believe we can be a successful city if people are priced out, can't buy a home, can't see raising a family here, building wealth here. And so this is critical to socialize that particular cost amongst everyone in the community.
Thank you. Rich?
Anybody who's in the real estate industry knows that you can buy housing from the city of San Diego through estate sales. What happens is people die intestate and they escheat to the city, and the city then sells them. The first thing that I'm going to do when I am mayor is I'm going to call up the real estate asset department and say, we're not selling those properties anymore. You send a list over to me. I'm going to send it over to the Housing Commission, and we're going to rent those. We don't need, they're given to us. Those are free, that's free land for us. That's free housing for us. If we were to rent that, put that on renting and rent it to city employees like policemen and firemen, that's a way to keep city employees here working inside our city, and it's an immediate way to bring rental housing costs down. There are so many things right now in the real estate asset department. I could go on. It is criminal what is going on in the real estate asset department because they are so focused on giving away our land. Ladies and gentlemen, vote for me so that I can bring down housing costs.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, and let's get real about this. This is strictly a supply and demand issue. So you need to make sure that we create more supply so we can start bringing down the cost of housing. And there are a lot of things we can do at a government level when it comes to getting rid of regulations and red tape. If you look at what I did with granny flats and accessory dwelling units, in 2016, we had 0 applications for granny flats. We waived fees, we put together a booklet on how to navigate the system, and it made it much easier to build those smaller, more affordable units. We went to over 600 applications this year for granny flats. because we reduced regulations and fees and made it easier to build. I was at the Black Contractors Association the other day, and one of the black contractors was talking to me about how busy he is right now because he's doing so much work putting in accessory dwelling units around the city because the city got out of the way and made it easier for the industry to provide the housing that people need. Get out of the industry's way, they will provide the housing, then that will bring down the cost.
Thank you. Tasha?
Yes, I think that we need to come together and collaborate with state and federal and the local municipality so that we can actually figure out a way to drive down the prices together. There are regulations that we're not working together on, state regulations, local regulations. I think we need to come together so that we can talk to all of you and bring you to the table so that we can find a common ground that works best for everybody. I think us creating something and creating plans for you without you at the table is the wrong thing, and that's why we're in the situation we're in today. I think that if we're going to create something, you need to be at the table making the decisions. We represent you.
Thank you. Gita? Your answer.
No, she didn't.
No,
Not this
not on this question, on housing affordability. What would you try to do beyond attempting to build more units to make homes and apartments more affordable?
Well, people need jobs. We need to train people for jobs. That's part of our problem. Only certain people get good jobs here. And we were having a problem where people cannot pay or save money to afford homes. So I want to create, like Amar said, apprenticeship programs where you can earn and have a standard of income of $70,000 for most people here in San Diego. So we can look into investing into our tiny homes. And by the way, the average tiny home is 104,000 furnished. So we can help many people here in San Diego.
Thank you. Barbara?
Thank you. Well, as business people, you all know that time is money, and as mayor, I will oversee a restructuring of our development services department so that we process permits in a more timely manner so we can get more housing built more quickly. Second, Mr. Sherman correctly noted that part of this is a supply-demand issue, which is one reason I am concerned about the short-term rental industry, which continues to take units off the market at the same time that we're struggling to build new ones. In addition, I'm particularly upset that at least hundreds of apartment units and more every day, these are buildings that were permitted in to be lived in by a long-term resident, are being turned into short-term visitor accommodations. We need more hotels. Let's build them where they belong, not where apartments are, because we're never going to bring down the price of housing if we continue to allow this trend to escalate.
Thank you. Next question goes to Rich. It's on homelessness. Obviously, the flip side of housing is homelessness, right? And I'm going to approach this question a little differently in light of the mayor's, the current mayor's, Kevin Faulkner's State of the City address. What should law enforcement's role in homelessness be, and how would you make that happen? Rich, to you.
All right, well, law enforcement right now is being burdened by Faulkner and by this city. The real issue here is that homeless are made up of 4 different types of people: mental illness, addiction, people that are temporarily located because of economics, and 4, what I call the grifters, people that they just don't want to live in society. They like living out on the street. So we have these 4 people that we have to deal with. Unfortunately, the solution is we should have a triage. We should bring these people in and we should identify where they belong in the system and do it. The mayor spent $7 million on a homeless shelter that does not have bathrooms, does not have showers, does not have rental facilities or storage facilities for the homeless. We are not addressing the homeless issue in this city of San Diego, and the mayor is the worst one of it.
Scott, that's to you. And keep in mind, please, that the question was about law enforcement's role.
Yeah, and I think law enforcement has more of a role than we've been playing so far. We've been, as a city, concentrating a lot and spending a lot of taxpayer dollars on the compassion side. We've built tent shelters, we've built storage facilities, we've built overnight parking, we've built permanent supportive housing, affordable housing. But the one thing that needs more attention to is law enforcement's role in compelling people to get off the streets and seek the help that we need, that they need, and that we provide. It's not a crime to be homeless, but crimes you commit while being homeless, they are still crimes and need to be dealt with. It reminds me of a guy named Brian who was at Zephyr, Permanent Supportive Housing Project in Grantville for homeless veterans. He thanked me from the city for breaking up the tents downtown because he was in those tents shooting meth in his veins every day. And if it wasn't for somebody saying, you can't keep doing this, you need to find a different path, he went to the shelter, found he had benefits as a veteran, got social services, got into a sobriety program. Now he's living with a roof over his head, clean and sober for over a year, because somebody had the compassion and the caring to say, no, that's not good for you or the community.
Thank you. Tasha?
I think that we need to ask for transparency and stop labeling people, because if we look at the 2019 audit, it says that some criminal activity may have happened at the City Hall level. And so when we talk about criminals, we should not look any further than City Hall, who has been doing criminal activity in the way that they do business. Let me talk about police, because police should not be used to incarcerate people into a jail that has the highest rate of in-custody death with people who have mental illness and drug addictions. That is a shame, and that is a sham. We should also talk about the deficit that we are in because of the smart street lights. These people have been playing everyone in this city, and it needs to stop. We should never, ever use police unless it is someone being harmed. Homelessness is not a crime. People being mentally ill, they need a hospital, not a jail cell. And that is a shame that nobody thinks about that.
Thank you. Gita?
Thank you. I agree with Tasha. I believe the cops, the police department, that's not their role to patrol the homeless population. We need health providers. We need the community faith leaders to come. We need compassionate care. We don't need people being arrested and displaced and arrested and beaten and treated as criminals because they cannot help themselves. So I want to see the police removed from our homeless situation, unless there is some crime where safety is an issue. But honestly, the cops and homelessness don't go together. Many of our homeless populations are vets and women with children that are being arrested and their cars are taken away. They're getting arrested, then they come back, and where do they have to stay? On the streets. So we're not fixing the problem. We need to find out the root causes. I'm a family nurse practitioner. Like I said, I can diagnose and treat people. I do functional health. When we belong, when we are connected, when we have purposeful lives, we do better. Thank you so much.
Barbara?
Thank you. My homelessness policy focuses on addressing root causes. And a growing number of homeless individuals suffer from mental health and substance abuse issues. And we need to treat each person as an individual. And I think we're using police officers to address these individuals is not a good use of police time, given we have a shortage of police officers. We need more trained social workers on the street, talking to homeless individuals one-on-one, getting them into the help that they need. The police are only a last resort if someone commits a crime.
Thank you. Todd?
So the question was about law enforcement's role. Law enforcement's role is always to protect the public safety. And as many of my colleagues up here have said, homelessness is not a crime. Being poor is not a crime, and we shouldn't be voting to criminalize poverty. Sadly, that's been the City Council's current approach with some recent ordinances that have been passed. My observation is that we need to have far more social workers out in the community, field workers who go out and talk with the individuals and invite them to come into services. This isn't just my point of view. The city's auditor just this week issued a report criticizing the city's over-reliance on law enforcement to deal with our homeless problem. When you look at the fact that we're spending more than we ever have on this particular issue, but it doesn't seem to be getting better, it tells you right away that the current approach is not working. We have to make a change. My administration will represent that change, where we make homelessness a priority and we use lessons learned, national best practices to solve this issue. Cities across the nation are ending chronic homelessness. San Diego is not among them, but the ones that are doing it are not doing it by using law enforcement. They're using social services, social workers to actually end the cycle of poverty that's keeping people on the streets.
Thank you. And just a quick aside, thank you guys for all hitting your marks at 60 seconds. You're doing amazing. It's not an easy thing to do. Scott, this next question is for you. It's on Prop 13 and the split rule. Do you support the split roll ballot measure to generate billions of dollars in greater revenue through higher commercial property taxes in California? Why or why not?
No, I don't. Prop 13's been in place for a long, long time. It makes it to where people can actually afford to build equity in their house and live in their house. You take people who've been there for a very long time living on fixed income. Without Prop 13, it's going to be very difficult. Trying to mess with Prop 13 is something I wouldn't be even considering.
Tasha?
For me, I guess all of these things that we're talking about, what is it concerning people's lives? When we're talking about Prop 13, it was special interest. That's the issue with this city, is the special interest. They always get to get away with stuff. They're making millions while others are living poor. Prop 13 maybe didn't do what it said it was going to do. I'm not sure. I didn't vote for Prop 13, so I can't answer your question.
No,
Gita.
Prop 13.
I love these short answers. If that's all you got, Barbara.
That's all I got.
So actually, I was a business writer at the Sacramento Bee, and I covered Prop 13 way back when, 1978, right, Matt? I think about that. Actually spent 8 years as a journalist, first the Sacramento Bee and the LA Times. I don't support any changes to Prop 13.
Thank you for the question. My public service has always been about trying to do whatever we can to make ends meet for more people in this community. You've seen me carry that through a number of pieces of legislation that I've carried. I support Proposition 13. I would not support any changes, particularly any changes to it that apply to residential property owners. We will look at any future ballot measure if it happens to qualify. To my knowledge, none has actually qualified at this point.
Thank you.
I, too, was alive to vote in favor of Prop 13. We all remember why it was. I'm 72. Barbara's, I won't tell her age, but I'm older than she is. Thank you. We know why Prop 13 was passed. It was passed so that we could stay in our homes. Any attempt to change Prop 13 is merely an attempt to get more money for irresponsible government. In fact, I urge all of you to vote no on all tax increases, because the real problem today is by giving them more money, they just spend it more foolishly. Let's live within our means. Let's make our elected officials live within their means.
Thank you. I should have said you guys were doing a great job at 60 seconds earlier, because now you're doing 30 seconds, so we're going to get a ton of questions in. Next question is on rent control, and it goes to you, Tasha. Do you support rent control, a rent cap, or any form of government regulation to curb high rents? And if you support some government involvement, where do you draw the line between what might help and what might hurt the economy, and why? And if you favor no regulation, why is that?
Yeah, I support rent control, and for me, I want to drop rent control to 2% with owners' subsidies. Because people are not able to live, and we are separating families that were born and raised here in the city of San Diego with the high rents. There's going to have to be a give and take. It cannot continue to be the way it is. We have to reduce the rents. We are going to have more people living on the streets. We have not even been looking at the people who are couch surfing, who are prepared to move into the streets, the people who are losing jobs that are going to be living on the streets. We're not thinking about those people, and they can't afford a place to live, even the people that are on Social Security. Those people are not a thought in people's mind, but we're gonna have to do something in rent control. For me, is where we can start while having subsidies for owners. I don't want to ding owners. I don't want it to be an us against them.
Thank you. Gita.
So I am in favor of not having rent increase. I would like to see some standardization of involvement with the city and landlords. Because right now, anybody can charge anything at any time, raise your rent 2 months, 6 months down the road.
There's actually a state law
It's
in place
5%.
that prevents that.
Well, I haven't been renting for a long time, so I've been an owner of a house. So definitely, yes, we cannot make ends meet here in San Diego. It's one of the most expensive cities in America. So by increasing rent and having no control, yes, like Tasha said, we have an increasing chance of people becoming more and more homelessness, and it could be any one of us sitting here, from the highest to the lowest. So,
Thank you. Barbara.
I do not support rent control. As a businesswoman, I know it simply doesn't work. It doesn't create one new unit of housing. In fact, it may stymie new construction. It creates an insidious system in which there's a black market. Just ask people who live in New York about rent control and how terrible it has been in that city. Mr. Gloria voted for AB 1482, which he will tell you is rent stabilization. It's rent control. And I would have voted no had I been in the state legislature. Rent stabilization, AB 1482, is namely political speak, trying to sugarcoat something that is rent control.
Todd, I'll give you 90 seconds because your name was invoked.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself, because if she'd have voted that way, she'd have been in the minority. On this particular issue, rent control, I do not support it. A rent cap, I think, is a reasonable alternative to address escalating costs. Now, you all probably got a class earlier today on what this is. 5% plus inflation, basically 8% on an annual basis for anyone who's been a long-term tenant and in properties that are older than 15 years old. And so what we talked about was trying to figure out some way to allow people to have a fighting chance to live in this state. I have constituents whose rents are being increased 50, 75, 100% with nothing being done to the property. And now I recognize that this requires production, and I'm prepared to support production bills. And I would say that people on this stage that don't support production bills and want to make sure that it's harder for more housing to be built in this community. But I think a production legislation coupled with some tenant protections is absolutely reasonable. And this is not rent control. You're not going to have neighborhood boards that set the rent increase in every different community. It's statewide in scope, so it doesn't leave San Diego at a competitive disadvantage. And it was something that a large majority of both houses of our legislature and our governor could stand behind. When I went back and looked at as a renter, and one of the few on this stage, when I looked back at whether or not this would have impacted me, it wouldn't. None of the rent increases I've received over the last many, many years would not have been impacted by this particular piece of legislation. It provides for a reasonable return on long-term ownership properties, and it provides for certainty for renters. Everyone in this room wants certainty for the development industry. I think there deserves to be some level of certainty for those folks who are working extremely hard but are finding themselves squeezed more and more. 8% is a reasonable rate of return. The 50, 75, and the 100% that we're seeing, that is rent gouging, and that should be illegal in the state.
Thank you. Rich?
Rent control is rent control. I don't care what you call it. It starts out with rent caps. It starts out with saying nice words. It's used by the politicians to get votes. That's what they're doing. They're trying to give away your property. If you own rental property, they're trying to give away your property at the expense of you so they can get votes. Now, rent control historically has never worked. I challenge anybody here to argue that statement. It does not work. The solution then is land costs. Land costs and, of course, the regulation. Another part of our problem in our city is, as Barbara has pointed out accurately, is when you go to get permits. I think that the permit department is just terrible. I don't think they do a very good job. They add thousands of dollars of cost in there uselessly. And it's because the people that run that department have done it for so long and it's been done so poorly. That's why we have high housing costs.
Thank you, Rich. Scott?
Yeah, absolutely not. Rent control's been a dismal failure everywhere it's been tried. I forget the economist who said the only way better to destroy housing stock other than strategic bombing is rent control. And I don't like it when politicians and legislatures come in and tell me what a reasonable rate of return is on the property that you all own. Market should dictate what happens there. At the end of the day, as a property owner, you still got to pay the bank, you still got to pay your taxes, you still got to pay your insurance, you still have to pay everything. But the one thing that you can probably skimp back on if you can't raise the rates to afford to replace what you need to replace is maintenance and repair. And then that just guarantees substandard living for everybody. Just increase the supply and bring down the costs.
Thank you. Next question is for you, Gita, to start. I know we've talked about vacation rentals. Let's take a deeper dive into that. How will you end the city's inability to regulate short-term vacation rentals? Is a ballot measure inevitable, and should the city have pushed its last proposal onto the ballot? Gita?
I support safe neighborhoods. Having these bed and breakfasts in our neighborhood, it's a threat to families. I support it on the ballot. Controlling short-term rentals or Airbnb I'm not for it. I just met one of my neighbor recently. She's going to vote for me. She has the open house, empty house syndrome. She's renting out each one of her room for $300 a night. And I felt a little upset hearing that because I live just right across from her. Because I don't know who's coming in my neighborhood. I have 3 sons. I wouldn't want them having a pedophile in my neighborhood or something like that. I don't support these Airbnbs in our neighborhood, in good neighborhoods. Well, all neighborhoods should be good and safe.
Barbara.
So I've been the leading advocate on the City Council to rein in this industry, and I authored the legislation that the City Council passed 6-3 a few years ago that Airbnb didn't like, would have restricted short-term rentals to primary residents only. They didn't like it. They went out and spent over $1 million collecting signatures, and the council was faced with 2 choices, either rescind, which is what I voted to do, or to put it on a future ballot. I don't want this issue decided at the ballot, and as we all know, the city attorney has released a legal opinion that they are illegal in residential neighborhoods. And as mayor, I will enforce the existing law, which other cities with similar municipal codes are doing. And this is essential. This is an essential piece of making sure we have housing for San Diegans. Mr. Sherman, FYI, voted against the reasonable regulation of the industry, and Mr. Gloria had a chance to deal with it when he was on the city council and did not.
Thank you. Todd, I'm going to give you 90 seconds, and Scott, when it comes to you, I'll give you 90 seconds too.
Thank you. So it is ridiculous that our city has not been able to deal with this issue, and it starts with poor leadership, particularly in the mayor's office on this matter. What was just said a moment ago is not factually accurate. I fashioned 2 motions at City Council that were approved by my colleagues to regulate this particular practice. The mayor chose to ignore both of those motions, never giving us an ordinance to actually consider. The council recently took it up and of course wasn't able to get the job done. If this is continuing to be an issue for the next mayor, which it shouldn't be, that the council could take up action right now and do something about it. If it continues to be an issue, I will bring the parties together to finally put this issue to rest. But more importantly, I want to be clear that I will enforce the law. And I enforce the law because it's really important that when you have a legal opinion that says something is illegal, that you follow that directive. We can't just pick and choose which laws we want to live under. I think we see some of that happening at the federal level, and we don't want that here in San Diego. If you don't like the law, you should change it, and I want to be the one that if we cannot solve it in this current year with this current group of leaders, the next group of leaders needs to actually take decisive action, put this issue to bed. Other cities have done it. Why can't San Diego? The issue is the quality of leadership. I want to be a bold leader that will get this issue done.
Thank you. Rich?
I certainly agree with Barbara and Todd in this measure. We have the laws on the books right now. All we needed is a city attorney and a police chief that will enforce the laws. And the reason they won't, good news is, I don't believe that Mayor Elliott is going to be the next city attorney. I think Corey Briggs will be, and he'll enforce the law, especially if I'm the mayor. Because I know Corey, and I know what I want to do, and I'm going to call up the city attorney, and I'm going to say to the city attorney, we got this law on the books. I don't want to hear any complaints from my constituents. Go out and arrest the landlords. I mean, we got the law, arrest them. She's ignoring the law. So it's a pretty simple solution, ladies and gentlemen. It's leadership. And we don't have leadership right now. Mayor Faulkner is without a doubt. I'm 72 years old. In the half century I have watched this city, he is without a doubt the worst mayor we have ever had. You know, and it just angers me. He won't enforce the laws. So I will bring a change to the mayor's office.
Thank you, Rich. I'm going to call Kevin right now and give him 30 seconds to respond to that. Scott, you got 90 seconds.
Yeah. Thank you, and I agree with Todd on this. It's really a problem with leadership and people kowtowing to special interest. Council member talked about the legislation that was put forward that passed. That had a ban in it. It said if you were at the beach, you could not have vacation rentals. That's banning people's personal property. When we talk about the city attorney and her memo saying that laws are on the books prohibiting these, we've got other memos from other city attorneys saying that they're perfectly legal. The city council had their opportunity several times to deal with this. We've been beating ourselves up for it for quite a while. I sponsored a measure that was co-sponsored with 3 other council members. There were 4 of us. Reasonable regulations. The ban Airbnb people didn't like it. The Wild Wild West pro Airbnb didn't like it, so I figured it was a pretty good compromise. Only needed 1 more vote at city council. Got there the day of the testimony. The head of the Building Trades Union sat right in the front row, got up to speak after 8 hours of testimony, said, "I don't like this, I want you to vote no." One of the council members who co-sponsored the measure with me voted against their own measure because the special interest told them what to do. Those are the things we need to get out of it. It's obviously been a long issue for a very long time. We can't seem to solve it, so when we can't seem to solve it, let's put it direct to the voters and let them solve it for us.
Thank you. Tasha?
Yeah. Yes, I believe that the voters should decide what they want. I think, again, that we forget that we are representatives. We should represent the voters, and some of them aren't in the room. When we talk about Airbnbs, we haven't regulated anything, scooters, bikes, Airbnbs, nothing. And you know why? Because many of the people that are violating things live in an area that is not low income. And when it's not low income, it's not regulated that much. And so let's keep it real and 100. People get upset about the things that matter. People invest in the things that matter. I'm not up for arresting anybody, whether they have a higher economic status or a lower economic status. I just want us to be clear, lay down clear policy and procedures, and we never seem to do that. You have current politicians standing up here, have never done that. They haven't done it with smart streetlights, they haven't done it with bikes, scooters, they haven't done it with anything. And we're gonna continue the same. I think we need to stop. We need to stop being played and put it to the voters and let them decide, because clearly educated politicians that are elected to represent us has not done that.
Thank you. Next question is on Measure A. Housing availability and affordability are regional concerns across San Diego County, and city leaders are often called upon to advocate for solutions outside city limits. Do you support Measure A on the March ballot to require voters to approve housing developments of 6 or more units in parts of the unincorporated county? Why or why not?
I know this is going to sound strange, but I haven't yet decided how to vote on Measure A, so I'm still doing my research and making up my mind. I would like to say one more thing about short-term rentals. It's been very frustrating to have a mayor who won't enforce the existing law, and that's what I will do as mayor. At this time, I do not see the need to sit down with the industry, which is taking housing away from San Diegans. I simply want to enforce the existing law, which is the right thing for our city for the long term.
A quick follow-up, because you only took 20 seconds and because you didn't answer the question. How do you make up your mind on this measure? And have you told anyone in the campaign that you either support it or oppose it?
So what I'm going to be looking at, I don't want to see sprawl development. So I'm definitely voting no on B, which is Newland Sierra, because that is sprawl development. What I'm trying to understand with A is whether it will allow specific plans so that it won't stymie when specific projects come, it won't stymie small projects, and I haven't yet gotten my arms around the legal part of Measure A in terms of what it allows and what it won't allow. What I am most concerned about is not allowing sprawl development in the county. It's not good for meeting our climate action plan goals, it's not good for having density around transit. So I'm sort of getting into the weeds as to what Measure A would allow or not allow.
Okay, thank you.
And if
Todd.
anybody here has thoughts afterwards, I'd be love to talk to you to get some more insights.
Todd.
I want to be very clear that I do not support sprawl development in the backcountry, but I intend to vote no on Measure A. And I joined County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher of the Democratic Party in having that position. My focus is on making sure that we elect more progressive voices to the County Board of Supervisors so they can do their jobs and render better decisions on the projects that go through the County Board of Supervisors.
Rich.
I am going to vote yes on A. I believe that A is a great solution. We have a growth management plan, and we've ignored it, and we've ignored it to our detriment. You can see it any time. When we start driving out of here tonight, this place is packed with cars trying to get in and out of San Diego. The only way we can control development is to put it up to the vote of the people. I have a lot more faith in the voters of San Diego County than I do in the Democratic Party. So, ladies and gentlemen, vote yes on A and no on B.
Scott.
I'll be nice and succinct and perfectly clear. Measure A, absolutely not. if we have a housing crisis, we have a housing affordability crisis, and if you really want to put anything with 6 units or more in front of the voters to be approved, that's just going to increase the cost even more. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it's just going to increase cost on housing.
Tasha?
So I guess I don't really want to answer that question, but I want to ask, I want to talk about Measure B, because I heard from some community members who have children in North County, and they were told that there was no infrastructure plan with Measure B, and they were also told that the 2 schools that are near that community are going to have to take in kids without having funding. And so I want to be clear that I want to understand that we're not building things for people without making sure that there's enough stuff for them. Infrastructure, roads, how are you going to deal with congestion? How are you going to deal with safety? Are those things taken into place with Measure B? And if not, then I would question Measure B, and I would want to know what special interest is behind Measure B. As far as Measure A, it's my understanding that it gives it to the people. The people can create the plan of what it looks like, and I'm about the people. So I haven't really made clear which one, but I'm still talking to folks because I don't live in North County, and one of the things that harbors with me is when people make decisions for my area, like superintendent, or I'm sorry, like board of or board trustees for school districts that don't do anything for us.
Gita?
So Prop A, I haven't decided, but I would tend to say no to it. Like Tasha, Proposition B, I live in North County, I do not support it. I looked at it last night, where it's 2,300 units, houses being built. We have 200 for low income, we have 300 for middle income, and the rest now is very expensive homes. I support sprawling of different homes in different communities. I want to see San Diego decentralized. It's too crowded down here. It's just too crowded. It's a public health threat, downtown San Diego. San Diego is so big. We have so much land. Let's build our tiny home in different places. That's what I support. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're almost out of time. I'm going to throw one question at you and try not to answer it in 60 seconds. I'm just wondering if you can answer it off the top of your head in just as few words as you use. What is the single most pressing infrastructure need in the city of San Diego? And Todd, you're first.
Fix our roads. Sorry, correction, fix the damn roads. That's how you should say it.
Rich?
I certainly agree with that. Let's spend the tax dollars that we've committed to the roads that we were promised. So, yeah, fix the roads.
Roads and sewer, both.
Tasha?
Yeah, I would say make sure you're fixing the pipes so that you don't have another road that's been fixed that gets flooded and damaged. And make sure that it's done correctly, because we're fixing our roads and they're still having holes and cracks and stuff. So not just fix our roads, do it correctly, do it accurately so it's one time and we're not wasting money, but also the pipes.
Gita?
Our traffic, our freeway, our streets. I want to see a better subway system. I want to see less cars on the freeway and less crowding on our streets. Let's get a better public transport system like New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and London. That's so effective. Thank you so much.
Barbara?
Streets and what's underneath the streets.
Thank you. Time for closing statements, and why don't we start with Tasha and come back this way.
Hi, thank you guys for allowing me to be here. I appreciate it. And to the organizers, thank you guys for putting this on. I'm here because many times people who come from my economic status and my background are forgotten. They're forgotten even with the Opportunity Zone, where we have seen many developers that are looking at opportunities in communities where lower income status people live. I'm here because I want to be a champion for the people. You have to understand that even though there are special interests and there's people with money, there are more people who live in poverty and middle class, and those are the ones that you should be uniting with to make sure that you understand what their needs are. They have been forgotten, they have been left out, and I am a voice for them. I'm a choice for them as well. And unfortunately, I just don't want the same old game. We've been played, we have been put up, We have wasted time and money and energy, and nothing has changed for us with the politicians that we currently have that are standing here and those that are out there not representing us. I'm a change agent. Thank you. My name is Tasha Williamson, 2020. Please make sure you vote March 3rd. We can change the game.
Scott.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here. Many of you in this room know me. I've been advocating for things in the housing world since I got here 7 years ago. And I have a reputation at City Hall of standing up to the politicians and the special interests and the unions and the crony capitalists and doing what I think is right for San Diego. You know, my old man told me many years ago, just do what you think is right and let the chips fall where they may, and good things will happen. And that's the way I've led at City Hall. I've tried to lead by example. Hopefully some people have paid attention. But now I think I need to take it up one more step and do that in the mayor's office and start advocating for cleaning up our streets, creating the housing that we need so our kids and our grandkids can actually afford to live in this city. I would have loved to have your support. You've done it before for me in my last 2 races. Would love to have it again. And one thing you can rest assured that whatever I do, and whether you agree with me or not, I will be doing it in what I think is the best interest of all San Diego. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Rich.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the easiest election you've ever had. You got to ask yourself one thing. Are you happy with the direction of San Diego? If you're happy with the direction of San Diego, you've got 3 candidates that are going to take it in the same direction. If you're not happy, you have one candidate who has the knowledge, the experience, the will, and the desire to make this city a better city, to make us as great as we are capable of, to bring housing prices down, to get the pension problem under control. When you read your ballot statement, I don't want you to remember my name. I want you to read the ballot statement and look for the ideas. There's only one candidate espousing these 3 ideas. Stop the sale of city-owned land, put them all on Social Security, use the mayor's salary as a benchmark and a hiring freeze on everybody more than $100,000 and a 10% pay cut. Remember, vote.
Thank you. Todd.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Realtors. Thank you all so much for this opportunity. I already shared with you earlier, I'm the son of a hotel maid and a gardener. 2 people that worked extremely hard here in San Diego were able to buy a home and put their 2 kids through college, the first in our family to ever do it. That story was possible not quite 30 years ago. Does anyone in this hotel this afternoon believe that a maid and a gardener can replicate that story in 2020? No. We know that they can't. And I want to push back against that. I want to lead the charge to fix that. Because while the mayor may not be able to solve all of it, the next person who sits behind that mayor's desk should be thinking about people like that. Folks who get up every single day and work their fingers to the bone and let them have a sense that there is a future for themselves in this community, a place where they can buy a home, where they can raise a family, where they can build wealth and have a bright future. That's what my campaign is about. And I know this is something that we have in common cause. So, like Mr. Sherman, I appreciate the support I've had in the past. I would humbly ask for your support once again. Let's move this city forward and do it with the knowledge that I did it once for 8 months under the most difficult of circumstances. Let me do it again for you for 8 years under more normal circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Barbara.
27 years ago, I was a single working mom with 2 daughters, 8 and 11, and I was blessed to end up as a successful tech entrepreneur. I ran for public office for the first time in 2016 and was astonished to find a toxic culture of no accountability and no transparency at City Hall. And I stood up to immediately opposing special interests like Soccer City, Airbnb, and the scooter industry. I think you should ask, why are labor unions now spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of ads on television attacking me? They don't want me to get out of the March primary because they know in a race against Mr. Gloria, just the 2 of us, I have a chance to win. That may be why Mr. Sherman got into the race late. My goal as mayor is to make sure that we maintain the quality of our neighborhoods. I am not beholden to special interests. I will work every day for you, and that is what is important. Local government has failed you, and it is time that local government deliver for the residents of San Diego.
Thank you, Gita.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this debate forum. This is my In 2016, I jumped into the mayoral race as a novice, like I usually do everything. My first marathon, I jumped in 3 months, and I trained to do the Los Angeles Marathon. I've run 6 marathons. My slogan is run.com. I'll go the extra distance from you. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I'm going to go in the streets and help our people. I'm a people person. I'm cross-cultural. I'm a woman. I'm for women issues, gender equality. I will briefly read what I said in 2016 because it hasn't changed. Gita Applebaum for mayor. Vote for Gita Applebaum, a fresh face, a voice of social equality, end homelessness, affordable housing, rent control, eliminate heroin and meth from killing our youths, protect our neighborhood, as access to health, bridge the gap of poverty, reform public schools, eco-friendly, sustainable produce, tiny homes, accessible
Thank
to
you,
all
Gita.
San Diegans. Vote for me, it takes a village. I came from a village. I'm an immigrant woman.
Thank you
I've been
very
from
much.
San Diego 41 years.
I
Thank you.
think there's some closing statements, so I'm going to get out of here. But I want to thank all of the candidates and all of you for sticking around because the traffic's really bad. Now, thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, even just a big thank you guys to all of you out here who have hung out. It has been a really, really long day. Can we give a hand clap to Matt Hall?
Yes.
And our candidates. We appreciate you guys coming out, taking the time. It's very important. And you guys know we need to hear from you, honestly. And so it really means a lot that you took the time out to come. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.